motion be agreed to.
Mr Speaker.
Scott Simpson.
Mr Speaker, thank you very much. As Chair of the Local Government Environment Select Committee, it's a great pleasure for me to rise in the second reading debate on this Wellington Town Belt Bill to report back to the House on the very good work, constructive work, I think, that was done in Select Committee. And at the outset, sir, I would like to place on record my grateful thanks for the cooperation and the collegial approach taken by all members across the committee for their work on this very special piece of legislation that will effectively modernise the trust deed that was set in place such a long time ago, in fact back in 1908. Of the first piece of legislation around the Wellington Town Belt Bill came into force, and it needed modernising for a number of reasons, because those trustees who in fact established the Wellington Town Belt all those years ago had remarkable foresight and wisdom to have created for the good people of Wellington then, now and in the future a remarkable piece of green space that is a true treasure for all Wellingtonians and indeed all New Zealanders who have the good fortune to visit Wellington and share in this space. The bill is a bill that is a local bill, and it is being promoted by the Wellington City Council. And as the committee worked through our deliberations on the bill, we were very cognisant of the fact that the Wellington City Council has put an enormous amount of effort, time and energy in getting to where the bill was when presented to the House at first reading and to Select Committee as we worked through that process. And I want also, sir, to acknowledge the work of the sponsor, the local Member of Parliament, Grant Robertson, for his work, because he has in fact over a long number of years been very committed to progressing this through the House into its current form. And it's somewhat ironic that as someone who has clearly been committed to updating this piece of legislation, that he found himself in the somewhat unusual situation of having to prepare a minority view that was attached to the committee's report. And albeit that minority view was small and on a pretty small piece of the bill, I found that sort of slightly ironic, but it was one of the vague quirks of the parliamentary system, I guess, that something like that could occur and be allowed to happen. Sir, I want to acknowledge also at this stage the very significant and helpful submissions by those people and organisations that took an opportunity to provide both written and oral submissions to the committee. We received in total 31 submissions from interested groups and individuals, and we heard from a total of 21. I was struck by the passion, by the vigour and by the enthusiasm of those groups, who not all were in agreement with each other, but they all had a common passion for the Wellington Town Belt. And it became very obvious to me, sir, as a non-Wellingtonian very early on in the submission process, that in fact the Green Belt is held in enormously high regard by such a wide cross-section of the Wellington community and people that you couldn't help but, as a non-Wellingtonian, be impressed by their passion and their enthusiasm for this remarkable space that is a green belt, literally within now a thriving urban metropolis that is our capital city. And again, thinking back to the foresight of those people who created it all that time ago, you can't help but be humbled by that, Mr. Speaker. There were a variety of really interesting submissions. We went through them and gave them all consideration. There were submissions about licences and about land that was subject to treaty settlement claims. There was concern about the bill's potential conflict with the Public Works Act. And there were a range of other issues that were raised. I'd like to think, sir, that as a Select Committee we've gone through and we've been able to address pretty much all those concerns, and I think that we've done so in a full and complete way. But Grant Robertson, in his address just a few moments ago, did make a point that it appears that we have been a little bit remiss in terms of the designation of this 8 hectares in terms of what's available or going to be available for leases and licence. The intention absolutely is that only 8 hectares be available in total, and that it's not a double up or a double down of that piece of land, that in fact it's not going to be 8 hectares of lease plus 8 hectares of licence, that would be in total 16 hectares. So I think that the member need not worry. I'm sure that the House will find it not beyond its wit or imagination to satisfactorily conclude that matter when the committee of the House comes to address this piece of legislation. So on that note, I'm looking forward to hearing further contributions in the second reading debate. I'm looking forward to seeing this bill be discussed by the Committee of the Whole and ultimately come to third reading as promptly as is possible, so that the good people of Wellington can be assured that the Wellington Green Belt is in good governance for the next 100 or more years, and that as a Parliament we will have updated this long overdue piece of legislation, but we will have done it in a way that is meaningful and positive for generations yet to come. So, sir, I commend the bill to the House.